All right, so buckle up, everybody, because today we're going to be doing a deep dive into something
Oh, yeah.
pretty interesting.
Interesting for sure.
It's the connection between politics and health. And specifically, we're going to be looking at this video that we found called Congratulations, Mr. Trump.mp4.
Right.
And what's really fascinating is that it's from a health channel,
Yeah.
not a political one.
And I think the timing of this is really interesting, right? Because this was released November 6th, 2024,
Oh, wow.
right after the U.S. election results came out,
Oh, okay.
showing that Donald Trump won
Against Kamala Harris?
against Kamala Harris.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the context here.
Yeah.
And what the speaker is saying in this video is that this election could be a turning point for health.
Wow.
Not just in the U.S.
Globally.
Globally, yeah.
They're really focusing on specific people and the changes they might bring.
That's a bold claim.
It is.
Can politics really have that much of an impact on health?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see what they have to say.
Okay.
They start by talking about Bobby Kennedy Jr.
Right.
and how he might have a big role in the Trump administration.
Yeah, maybe even in agriculture.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's where I think it gets really interesting.
And this is what the speaker's really excited about.
Yeah.
This idea of data-driven healthcare decisions.
Okay.
And they see Kennedy Jr. as someone who could really push for that.
More transparency.
Yeah, they even talk about the possibility of releasing all that raw health data
Wow.
to the public
To the public.
and to researchers.
Can you imagine what we could learn if all that information was available?
Oh my gosh, it would be a
Yeah.
huge data liberation movement.
Wow.
We could finally get a clear picture of things like
Yeah.
how well vaccines actually work long-term,
Long term.
the actual impact of certain diets on health,
Wow.
the long-term effects of different medications.
All this stuff we just don't have good data on.
We just don't know. It would
Yeah.
change everything.
It's mind-blowing.
It is.
But there's another big name that the speaker connected to this election.
Oh, yeah.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk.
My
What's
favorite.
the link there?
It all comes down to free speech.
Okay.
Musk is a huge advocate for free speech, and the speaker sees this election as a win for open discussion, especially when it comes to health and science.
So they're thinking this more open environment could lead to some really interesting conversations
Yeah.
about health.
Maybe even controversial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely something to keep an eye on.
For sure.
Now, the
Yeah.
speaker doesn't shy away from some tough talk about the state of health in America.
Yeah.
They call it a metabolic health disaster.
Wow.
They point out that 70% of the food in the U.S. is ultra-processed.
Wow. 70%.
And they even mentioned that the U.K. isn't much better.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's the backdrop.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
So with this new political landscape,
Yeah.
what are they hoping is going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, they have a whole list of changes they want to see.
Okay.
A lot of it revolves around fighters like Kennedy Jr. being in positions of power.
Okay.
For starters, they want a major crackdown on all these ultra-processed foods.
I love that they said something like, we need to eat food that grows on farms, not in factories.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
I know.
Of course, to really tackle this,
Yeah.
they say we'd have to take on big agriculture.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other...
But it's a whole other
Right,
can of worms.
Yeah, you have to wonder how much influence these big corporations have.
Yeah,
And if a new administration could really change things.
that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the speaker seems optimistic, especially when it comes to this idea of data-driven farming.
Data-driven farming.
Imagine if we could actually see the long-term effects of different farming methods.
Right.
Pesticides,
Wow.
all of it.
It would completely change the way we think about food production.
It would.
And speaking of change, the speaker also wants to see a big shakeup in agencies like the FDA and the CDC.
Right. They're calling for way more transparency in those agencies
Yeah.
and an end to what they call the revolving door between the government and big corporations.
So it's all about who's really calling the shots.
Yeah.
And making sure that the decisions are based on what's best for public health,
Exactly.
not just corporate profits.
Right.
And it all ties back to this big data thing we were talking about.
It does.
If all that raw health information becomes public,
Yeah.
the speaker thinks we could uncover some hidden patterns and trends.
Yeah.
That could be really eye-opening.
Mm-hmm.
They even bring up analyzing data on people who got the COVID-19 vaccine versus those who didn't.
Now that's a controversial topic.
I know, but it does make you wonder what kind of insights we could gain from looking at that data objectively.
Absolutely.
The speaker seems to think there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah.
And it's not just limited to human health. They talk about a more holistic view, including animal welfare,
Right.
moving away from monocropping, which is basically just growing a single crop on a large scale over and over again.
Over and over.
And promoting regenerative agriculture, which focuses on soil health and biodiversity.
Exactly. So they're connecting the dots between environmental health, food systems, and human health.
It's all part of a bigger picture.
It is.
And to really address this, they argue that we need a more affordable and accessible healthcare system in the U.S.
Right. They're not happy with the current state of things.
Yeah, where costs are high.
Yeah.
And outcomes aren't that great.
And outcomes aren't great.
They even bring up that graph from Joe Rogan's show.
Oh, yeah.
With Trump.
The one that shows the huge gap.
Yeah, between how much the U.S. spends on healthcare compared to its life expectancy.
Yeah. It's a pretty stark visual.
It is.
And it really highlights the need for change.
So we've got data transparency, agricultural reform, a new vision for healthcare. And there's one more big issue that the speaker wants to tackle.
Okay.
The opioid crisis.
Oh, yeah.
And they have a really interesting take on it.
What is it?
They see it as a chance to treat addiction as a disease.
Okay.
Offering help and support rather than punishment.
It's a more compassionate approach?
It is.
Recognizing that addiction is a complex issue.
Very complex.
Needs a multifaceted solution.
So what do you think? This speaker has laid out a pretty bold vision.
It is bold.
Connecting politics to pretty much every aspect of health.
Yeah.
What are the key takeaways for our listeners so far?
Well, I think it's clear that they see this election as a potential catalyst for some major changes.
Okay.
They're calling for more transparency, more data-driven decisions,
and
a shift away from corporate influence.
Especially in healthcare and agriculture.